My son and his wife posted a photo drinking mimosas on the deck of the world's largest cruise ship. The caption read, "Family vacation, just the three of us." They were right about the number 3. They took their biological son. They took their luggage. But they left my 8-year-old adopted granddaughter locked in a dark house with a loaf of moldy bread and a note that said, "Be good." They thought I was just a retired old man who would not notice. They forgot that before I was a grandfather, I was a logistics commander for the U.S. Army, and I do not leave people behind. Before I tell you how I crashed their vacation and made them famous in the worst way possible, please tell me where you are watching from in the comments. Hit like and subscribe if you believe family is about love, not blood. The red numbers on my digital alarm clock read 2:03 a.m. In my line of work, or at least in the line of work I used to do, sleep was a luxury, not a right. You learn to wake up instantly. No grogginess. No rubbing your eyes. When the phone on my nightstand vibrated against the wood table, I was awake before my hand even touched the receiver. I expected a wrong number, or maybe a robocall. I did not expect the sound of a child trying not to cry. "Grandpa." It was a whisper. So quiet I almost missed it. It was Mia, my 8-year-old granddaughter. Her voice was shaking so hard the syllables were vibrating. "Mia." I sat up. The sheets fell to my waist. "Why are you whispering? Is everything okay?" "Grandpa, I am thirsty." The confusion hit me first. Thirsty. Why was she calling me at 2 in the morning because she was thirsty? Her bedroom was down the hall from her parents' room. Austin and Monica were heavy sleepers, but they were not deaf. "Honey, go ask your daddy for water. It is late." "I cannot." Her voice cracked. A tiny splintering sound that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "The door is locked, Grandpa. The big door." "What do you mean, the big door?" "The front door, and the back door, and the garage door." I knocked on Mommy and Daddy's room, but nobody answered. "I think they are gone, Grandpa." It is really dark, and I heard a noise in the basement, and I am scared. My blood ran cold. It was a physical sensation like someone had injected ice water directly into my veins. I did not ask another question. I did not ask her to check again. I knew. A man knows when something is wrong. It is an instinct. I survived 30 years in the military by listening to that instinct, and right now it was screaming at me. "Listen to me, Mia." I was already out of bed, pulling on my trousers with one hand, holding the phone with the other. "I want you to go into your closet. Take your blanket. Close the closet door and sit there. Do not come out until you hear my voice. Do you understand?" "Yes, Grandpa. I am coming. Stay on the line if you want, but do not make a sound." I did not bother with socks. I shoved my feet into my boots and grabbed my keys. Then I paused. I opened the top drawer of my nightstand and took out my Sig Sauer. I checked the chamber. Loaded. I did not know what was waiting for me at Austin's house. Maybe it was a break-in. Maybe they were hurt. But if someone was in that house frightening my granddaughter, I was not going to greet them with a handshake. I drove the 20-minute route in 12. My truck tore through the suburban silence, ignoring stop signs when the intersections were clear. The phone lay on the passenger seat, the line open but silent. Every mile I drove, my mind raced. Austin was my son. He was soft. He had always been soft. He cared too much about what people thought about him. But Monica, my daughter-in-law, she was different. She was cold in a way that pretended to be warm. I pulled into their driveway, and my headlights swept across the front of the house. It was dark, completely dark. Not even the porch light was on. But the most chilling detail was the driveway itself. It was empty. Austin's SUV was gone. Monica's sedan was gone. The silence of the house was heavier than the darkness. I killed the engine and grabbed the spare key I kept in my glove box. I ran to the front door. My grip on the pistol in my pocket tightened. I unlocked the door and pushed it open. "Mia!" I called out. My voice boomed in the entryway. Silence. I flipped the light switch. Nothing happened. The power was out. No. Not out. Shut off. I could see the breakers on the wall panel near the kitchen were flipped. Who shuts off the power when they leave a child at home? I used the flashlight on my phone. The beam cut through the stale air. The house felt abandoned. It had that smell of a place where life had stopped. I moved toward the stairs, but then I remembered my order. The closet. I took the stairs 2 at a time. I went straight to Mia's room. It was the smallest room in the house. The guest room was bigger. The office was bigger. Leo's room, the biological son, was twice this size, filled with every toy imaginable. Mia's room was bare. A bed. A dresser. Mia. It is Grandpa. The closet door creaked open. A tiny figure emerged from the shadows. She was clutching a teddy bear that had seen better days. Its ear was torn and the stuffing was coming out. I recognized it. I had bought it for her the day the adoption was finalized 3 years ago. It was the only toy I could see in the room. She launched herself at me. She was trembling so violently, her teeth were chattering. I holstered my weapon and scooped her up. She felt light, too light, like a bird that had not eaten in days. "Shh, I have got you." I held her tight, feeling her tears soak into my flannel shirt. "You are safe now." I carried her downstairs. I needed to understand. Where were they? People do not just vanish. I walked into the kitchen. The beam of my flashlight swept across the marble countertops Monica was so proud of. That was when I saw it. A piece of yellow notebook paper taped to the refrigerator. My hand shook as I pulled it off. I shined the light on the handwriting. It was Monica's loopy, artistic script, the kind she used for her thank you cards. Mia. We have taken Leo to a special training camp for his baseball team. It was last minute. We will be gone for 2 weeks. There is bread on the counter. Do not go outside. The neighbors will call the police if they see you wandering around, and they will take you away to a bad place. Be good. We are watching you on the cameras. I stared at the note. Training camp. 2 weeks. I looked at the counter. There was a loaf of white bread. I reached out and touched the bag. It was hard. Green spots of mold were blooming on the crust. I felt a rage so pure and hot it almost blinded me. This was not negligence. This was malice. This was calculated cruelty. They left an 8-year-old child alone for 2 weeks with moldy bread and a threat that the police would take her away if she sought help. I looked at the refrigerator. I tried to open it. It wouldn't budge. I shined the light on the handles. A heavy-duty bicycle chain was wrapped around the handles of the French doors secured with a padlock. I looked at Mia. She was still in my arms, clinging to my neck. "Why is the fridge locked, honey?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mommy said I steal food," she whispered. "She said I eat too much, and that is why groceries are expensive. She said the food inside is for Leo because he is a growing boy, and I am just lucky to have a roof." I set Mia down on one of the bar stools. "Stay here, baby." I went out to my truck and grabbed the bolt cutters from my toolbox. I walked back inside. The metal snapped with a loud crack that echoed through the empty house. The chain rattled to the floor. I pulled the doors open. The light inside did not come on because the power was cut, but my flashlight revealed the truth. It was fully stocked. Steaks, fresh fruit, milk, juice, rows of yogurt, a birthday cake that said, "Happy Vacation." They had chained it shut, not to save food, but to starve her. I grabbed a bottle of water and cracked it open, handing it to Mia. She drank it in one long gulp, gasping for air when she finished. "We are leaving," I told her. "Pack your bag." "Actually, do not pack anything. We will buy you new clothes. Better clothes. Leave everything here." I drove her back to my house. The drive back was different. I was not panicked anymore. I was focused. The kind of focus I used to have when I was planning a supply line through a hostile zone. I made her a bowl of tomato soup and a grilled cheese sandwich. She ate it like it was the finest meal she had ever tasted. I watched her eat, and every bite she took was another nail in the coffin of my relationship with my son. After she fell asleep in the guest room wrapped in a clean duvet, I went into my study. I did not sleep. I could not sleep. I sat at my mahogany desk and opened my laptop. I needed to know where they were. Training camp was a lie. Austin hated baseball and Leo was terrible at it. I logged into Facebook. Nothing on Austin's page. He was smart enough to stay quiet. But Monica could not breathe without posting about it. Her life was a performance and she needed an audience. I went to her Instagram. Her profile was public. And there it was. Posted 4 hours ago. A picture of the three of them. Austin wearing a linen shirt. Leo holding a game controller. And Monica in a designer bikini holding a glass of champagne. The background was unmistakable. The massive water slides. The ocean view. The caption read, "Finally some peace. Royal Caribbean icon of the seas. 15 days of bliss with my boys. No distractions, just us. Hashtag family first. Hashtag luxury life. Hashtag blessed. No distractions." That is what she called Mia. A distraction. I zoomed in on the photo. They looked happy. They looked relieved. They were smiling that wide, carefree smile of people who think they have gotten away with a crime. I picked up my phone and dialed the number for the airline. I have been a platinum member for 20 years, and I know how to get information. I told the agent I was Austin's father and I wanted to confirm their return flight details to pick them up. I gave his date of birth. It was a security breach, but the agent sounded tired and I sounded authoritative. "Oh yes, Mr. Slater," the agent said. "The tickets for Austin, Monica, and Leo Slater were booked 6 months ago. Round trip to Miami. First class. 6 months." I hung up the phone. My hand was gripping the mouse so hard the plastic creaked. This was not last minute. This was not an emergency. They had planned this for half a year. For 6 months, they sat at the dinner table with Mia, knowing they were going to leave her behind like a piece of unwanted furniture. They had saved money. They had booked tickets. They had probably bought that bicycle chain weeks ago. I looked at the calendar on my wall. Today was Tuesday. The ship had just left the port of Miami yesterday. Their first stop was Nassau, Bahamas tomorrow. I looked at the photo of my son one more time. He looked like me. He had my eyes, my chin. But he did not have my spine. He was a coward who let his wife abuse a child because it was easier than fighting her. I closed the laptop. The sad grandfather who wanted everyone to get along died in that cold, dark kitchen tonight. Bill Slater, the logistics commander, was back. I opened my safe. I moved past the stack of bonds and the deed to my house. I reached to the back where I kept my emergency cash. A thick stack of $100 bills wrapped in a rubber band. I call it my war chest. I counted out $10,000. Then another 10. "I am not just going to rescue Mia," I whispered to the empty room. "I am going to destroy their vacation. I am going to destroy their reputation. And then I am going to take my granddaughter back forever." I booked 2 tickets to Nassau, one way. The sun was just starting to rise, turning the sky a blood red. It was fitting. Because I was coming for blood. The automatic sliding doors of the departures terminal parted, and a wall of noise hit us instantly. It was the specific frequency of travel chaos. Crying babies, rolling suitcases clattering over tile, the droning voice of the intercom announcing delays. For most people, this environment is a headache. For me, it was just another logistical puzzle to solve. I held Mia's hand tightly. Her palm was sweating. She was wearing a t-shirt I had bought her at a 24-hour superstore on the way to the airport because we had left her clothes behind in that house of horrors. It was pink and slightly too big, but she looked clean. She looked cared for. That was all that mattered. We joined the line for the check-in counter. It was long, winding back and forth between the tensile barriers like a snake. The digital board above us flashed the flight information. Miami to Nassau, departing in 2 hours. We were cutting it close, but in my experience, the best missions are the ones where you do not have time to overthink. I looked down at Mia. She was staring at her feet, avoiding eye contact with the other travelers. "Grandpa, are you sure we can go?" she asked softly. "Mommy said tickets cost $1 million. I squeezed her hand. "Mommy lies, Mia. We are going." We finally reached the front of the line. The agent was a young woman with tired eyes and a name tag that read, Sarah. She looked like she had been yelled at 5 times already this morning. I gave her my most polite smile, the one I used to reserve for generals and diplomats. 2 one-way tickets to Nassau, please. First class if you have it. Mia's eyes widened. First class. To her, that was a concept from movies, not real life. Sarah typed on her keyboard, her long acrylic nails clicking rhythmically. She asked for my passport and Mia's birth certificate, which I luckily kept in my own safe deposit box. I handed them over along with my platinum credit card, the heavy metal card that had a limit higher than most people's annual salary. I had built my credit score with the same discipline I built my career. I paid everything in full. Always. Sarah swiped the card. She waited. I watched her face. I saw the micro-expression before she even spoke. It was a slight frown, followed by a tilt of the head. "I am sorry, sir," she said. The card was declined. The words hung in the air between us. Behind me, a man in a business suit sighed loudly, checking his watch. I felt a prickle of heat on the back of my neck. "Try it again, please," I said calmly. "There must be a mistake. I have a 0 balance on that card." She nodded and swiped it again. This time she typed in the numbers manually. She hit enter. A long pause. Then she looked up at me with something worse than annoyance. Pity. "It is declined again, sir. It says do not honor. You might want to call your bank." The man behind me groaned. "Buddy, if you cannot pay, move aside. Some of us have places to be." I turned around slowly. I did not raise my voice. I just looked at him with the same look I used to give fresh recruits who forgot to polish their boots. The look that says I have survived wars, do not test me over a boarding pass. He shut his mouth and looked down at his phone. I stepped to the side of the counter, but I did not leave. Mia was trembling. "Did I do something wrong, Grandpa?" she whispered. "No, honey. This is just a computer error. Stand right here next to my leg." I pulled out my phone and dialed the priority number on the back of my card. It rang once. "This is William Slater. Authorization code Zulu Tango 9er. Why is my card being rejected?" "Mr. Slater." The voice on the other end was smooth, professional. "We put a freeze on the account due to suspicious activity. We noticed a large cash withdrawal at a branch counter yesterday afternoon that drained the available liquid limit. Since it was an in-person transaction, we assumed it was you, but the subsequent travel purchase flagged our fraud algorithm." I froze. A cash withdrawal. In person. I did not make a withdrawal. I said, my voice dropping an octave. "How much?" $25,000, sir. It was done at the branch on Main Street. The teller verified the signature on file. I closed my eyes. Main Street. That was where Austin worked. He was not just a customer, he was the branch manager. He knew the tellers. He knew the protocols. And he knew exactly how to forge my signature, because he had spent his whole life practicing it on report cards he did not want me to see. The betrayal hit me harder than the financial loss. It was not just theft. It was an execution. He had cleaned me out to fund his paradise. He wanted to make sure that even if I found out about Mia, I would be too broke to do anything about it. He thought he had stranded me. He thought he had cut my supply lines. He forgot who he was dealing with. "Sir, do you want to dispute the charge?" the banker asked. "No," I said coldly. "Leave it. I will handle it personally." I hung up. I looked at Sarah, the ticket agent. She was already waving the rude businessman forward. "Excuse me," I said, stepping back in front of him. "I am not finished. Sir, if the card is declined, there is nothing I can do." Sarah said, her patience wearing thin. I did not argue. I did not beg. I simply knelt down on one knee right there on the polished airport floor. Mia looked at me confused. The businessman snickered. "Look at this, the old guy is praying," he mocked. I ignored him. I reached down to my left boot. It was a habit from my first tour in the 70s. You never trust a bank in a war zone. You never trust a pocket that can be picked. You trust your boots. I unlaced the leather straps. I reached deep inside past the ankle support into a hidden lining I had sewn myself. I pulled out a thick envelope wrapped in plastic. I stood up and placed the envelope on the counter. The thud it made silenced the businessman. I tore open the plastic. Inside was a stack of $100 bills. Fresh, crisp, uncirculated. My emergency fund. My war chest. I counted out the money. 1,000. 2,000. I kept counting until the pile on the counter looked like something from a drug bust. "I believe this is legal tender," I said, keeping my voice flat. "2 first-class tickets to Nassau. And I want the window seats." Sarah stared at the cash. Then she stared at me. She swallowed hard. "Yes, sir." "Of course, sir." She started counting the money, her hands shaking slightly. The rude businessman behind me was dead silent. I turned to look at him. He was suddenly very interested in the ceiling tiles. I looked down at Mia. She was looking at the money and then at me with wide eyes. "Grandpa, why do you have money in your shoe?" "Because banks can make mistakes, Mia," I said loud enough for the people around us to hear. "And because sometimes the people you trust the most are the ones who steal from you. But you never let them stop the mission. Do you understand?" She nodded solemnly. Sarah handed me the boarding passes. Her attitude had completely changed. There was respect in her eyes now. Or maybe fear. I did not care which. "Thank you, Mr. Slater. Have a safe flight." I took the tickets. I took Mia's hand. We walked toward security. I could feel the weight of the remaining cash pressing against my ankle. It was uncomfortable, but it was a good pain. It was the feeling of ammunition. Austin thought he had disarmed me. He thought he had left me helpless. But all he had done was force me to go back to my roots. I was not just a grandfather anymore. I was a soldier deploying to a hostile theater. And I had just secured transport. The seatbelt sign dinged off with a soft chime that sounded like a bell marking the beginning of a new round in a boxing match. We were leveling off at 30,000 feet, leaving the gray clouds of the East Coast behind and piercing into the brilliant, unyielding blue of the upper atmosphere. I adjusted my seat, reclining it just enough to ease the ache in my lower back, an ache that had more to do with the tension of the last 12 hours than my age. Next to me, Mia sat rigid in her leather seat. In first class, the seats are like armchairs, wide and enveloping, designed to make you forget you are hurtling through the air in a metal tube. But Mia looked swallowed by it. Her legs dangled inches above the floor, her new sneakers swinging slightly with the vibration of the aircraft. She had not let go of the armrest since takeoff. Her knuckles were white. A flight attendant moved down the aisle. She was an older woman, with silver hair, and a smile that reached her eyes, the kind of professional warmth that usually puts people at ease. She stopped at our row, pushing a cart that smelled of fresh coffee and warmed sugar. "Good morning, Mr. Slater," she said, checking a digital tablet. "And good morning to you, young lady. Can I get you something to drink? We have fresh orange juice, apple juice, soda, or hot chocolate. And we have warm chocolate chip cookies coming out of the oven in just a minute." I looked at Mia, expecting her eyes to light up. Any 8-year-old I knew would have jumped at the mention of warm cookies and soda. But Mia did not smile. She flinched. It was a small movement, almost imperceptible, but I saw it. She shrank back into the leather, pushing herself deeper into the upholstery as if trying to disappear. "No, thank you," she whispered. Her voice was barely audible over the hum of the engines. I frowned. "Honey, you have not eaten anything since that grilled cheese sandwich hours ago. Have some juice. Get a cookie." Mia shook her head vigorously, her dark hair whipping across her face. "I am not hungry, Grandpa. I am fine." Just then her stomach gave a loud, undeniable growl. It was the sound of an empty belly, a sound that betrayed her polite refusal. The flight attendant smiled gently, not wanting to embarrass her. "I will leave some snacks right here on the console, just in case," she said, placing a bowl of warm mixed nuts and a glass of apple juice on the tray table. "Just in case you change your mind." She moved on to the next row. I waited until she was gone, then I turned in my seat to face my granddaughter. I reached out and covered her small, trembling hand with my own. My hand was rough, calloused from years of working in the yard and decades of military service. Her hand was fragile, cold, and clammy. "Mia, look at me," I said, my voice soft but firm. "Why are you lying to me? I know you are hungry. Why did you say no?" She looked down at her lap, picking at a loose thread on her jeans. She chewed her lip nervously. "Because it costs money, Grandpa," she said finally. Her voice was so quiet, I had to lean in to hear her. I sat back confused. "Honey, I bought the tickets. The food is included. It does not cost extra." She shook her head again, tears welling up in her eyes. "No, Grandpa. Mommy said nothing is free. She said that when we go places, I have to be careful because I am expensive. She said that the reason they cannot buy a boat like the neighbors is because my adoption fees cost so much. She said every time I ask for something special, like juice or a snack, I am taking money away from the family budget. She said if I am not careful, we will not be able to pay the electric bill and the lights will go out and it will be my fault." I felt the air leave my lungs. It was a physical blow, harder than any punch I had ever taken in a bar fight or a training exercise. This was not just physical neglect. This was psychological warfare. Monica was not just starving Mia's body, she was poisoning her mind. She was building a narrative where an 8-year-old child was responsible for the family's financial stability. I looked out the window at the endless white horizon. I tried to control the rage boiling in my chest. I thought about the receipts I had seen in Austin's office when I helped him with his taxes last year. Monica's handbags cost $3,000 each. Austin's golf club membership was $500 a month. They drove luxury cars. They drank imported wine. And yet they had looked this little girl in the eye and told her that a $3 soda was the reason they were struggling. They were gaslighting her. They were making her feel like a burden, like a parasite that should be grateful for the scraps she was given. They were teaching her to make herself small, to consume nothing, to apologize for her very existence. I turned back to Mia. I unbuckled my seatbelt and turned my body completely toward her. I took both of her hands in mine and waited until she looked up at me. "Mia, listen to me very closely," I said. "Every word I am about to say is the truth. Do you know that Grandpa used to be in charge of moving supplies for thousands of soldiers? I managed millions of dollars of equipment. I know how much things cost." She nodded, sniffing back a tear. "Your mother lied to you." Mia's eyes widened. "She is not supposed to lie. Lying is a sin." "She lied," I repeated. "You are not expensive. You are not a burden. The reason they do not have a boat is because your father loses money gambling on things he does not understand. The reason they complain about bills is because your mother buys clothes she does not need to impress people she does not like. It has nothing to do with you. You eating a cookie or drinking a juice does not make the lights go out. Do you understand me?" She looked doubtful. "But Mommy said—" "Mommy is wrong." I cut her off, and right now Mommy is not here. I am here. And let me tell you something about this plane ride. See this seat. See this glass of juice. I paid for it. It is done. If you drink it, it is paid for. If you pour it on the floor, it is paid for. You cannot waste my money because I have already spent it on you, and I spent it happily. I have plenty of money, Mia. I have enough money to buy this whole plane full of cookies if I wanted to. A tiny ghost of a smile touched the corner of her lips. The whole plane. The whole plane, I said. So here is the new rule. For the next 2 weeks while we are on this mission, you do not look at price tags. You do not worry about bills. Your only job is to be an 8-year-old girl. Your job is to eat when you are hungry, sleep when you are tired, and play when you are bored. I will handle the rest. I will handle the money. I will handle the lights. And I will handle your parents. I reached over and picked up the glass of apple juice. I held it out to her. "Drink it," I commanded gently. She hesitated for 1 second more, then her thirst won out. She took the glass with both hands and drank. She drank the whole thing without stopping, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand when she was done. "Good," I said. "Now press that blue button on your armrest." "What does it do?" she asked. "Press it." She pushed the button. A moment later, the silver-haired flight attendant appeared. "Yes, sir. Can I get you something else?" "My granddaughter would like a warm chocolate chip cookie," I said. "Actually, make it 2. And another juice. And do you have any ice cream? We have vanilla bean sundaes with hot fudge. We will take one of those too." I looked at Mia. "Is that okay with you?" Mia looked at the flight attendant, then at me. She saw the fierce determination in my eyes. She saw that I was not angry at her. I was fighting for her. "Yes, please," she whispered. When the food came, Mia ate. She ate with a focus that broke my heart. She ate the cookies. She ate the ice cream. She ate the nuts. And with every bite, I saw her shoulders relax a little more. I saw the terrified little prisoner fading and a child starting to emerge. I leaned back in my seat, watching her scrape the last of the hot fudge from the bowl. I made a silent vow to the universe and to the God I had not prayed to in years. They had spent years making her feel worthless. I had 2 weeks to undo it. "Mia," I said. She looked up, chocolate smeared on her cheek. "Yes, Grandpa. I want you to remember this feeling. Being full, being safe, being warm, because this is how it is going to be from now on. No one is ever going to lock a fridge on you again. No one is ever going to tell you that you are too expensive to love, not while I am breathing." She looked at me for a long time, studying my face, searching for any sign of deception. Then she nodded slowly. "Okay, Grandpa," she said. We hit a patch of turbulence then. The plane dipped suddenly, and the seatbelt sign chimed back on. Mia gasped and reached for my hand again. I held it tight. I did not flinch. I was a rock. I would be her rock. The turbulence was just beginning. The real storm was waiting for us in Nassau, and I was ready to fly straight into it. The humidity in Nassau hit us like a wet towel the moment we stepped out of the air-conditioned airport terminal. It was not the pleasant warmth of a tropical vacation. It was a suffocating heavy heat that smelled of diesel fumes roasting asphalt and too many bodies pressed into too small a space. We took a taxi to the cruise port. The driver was a man with gold teeth who wanted to talk about the weather and the best places to buy rum cakes. I ignored him. I sat in the back seat with Mia watching the colorful blur of the island whip past the window. My mind was not on the scenery. It was calculating timelines. The Icon of the Seas had docked at 7 this morning. It was scheduled to leave at 5 in the afternoon. It was currently 11:30. We had less than 6 hours to find them, confront them, and get off that ship before it sailed for open waters again. When we arrived at the Prince George Wharf, it was absolute bedlam. Thousands of tourists were pouring off the ships like ants from a kicked hill. They wore matching t-shirts and floppy hats, their skin already turning pink under the relentless sun. The noise was deafening. Steel drum music clashed with the shouting of tour operators and the honking of buses. I gripped Mia's hand so tight her knuckles turned white. "Stay close to my leg," I told her. "Do not let go for any reason. If you get lost, you stand still and scream my name. Do you understand?" She nodded, her eyes wide with sensory overload. She looked like a terrified mouse in a stampede of elephants. We pushed through the crowd toward the security checkpoint for the Royal Caribbean dock. This was the first hurdle. You cannot just walk onto a cruise ship. It is a floating fortress. They have metal detectors, X-ray machines, and guards who take their jobs very seriously. I approached the main gate. A large man in a white uniform held up a hand to stop us. He looked tired and sweaty and entirely uninterested in hearing a sob story. "ID and C-Pass cards." He droned without looking me in the eye. "I do not have a C-Pass card," I said, my voice cutting through the noise of the crowd. "I am here to purchase a day pass for the ship." He laughed. A short, dry bark of a laugh. "Day passes are sold online, sir. Months in advance. The ship is at full capacity. Unless you are a registered guest or crew, you are not getting past this yellow line. Step aside, please. You are blocking the flow." I did not step aside. I planted my feet. I had dealt with checkpoints in Baghdad and border crossings in Germany. I knew that every barrier has a key, and usually that key is confidence backed by leverage. "I am not a tourist," I said, stepping closer to him, so he had to look at me. "My son is on that ship. He has my property. I need 2 hours. I am willing to pay the premium gate price." "Look, old man." The guard sighed, putting his hand on his belt. "I do not care if your son is the King of England. No pass, no entry. Now move before I call the police." Mia shrank behind me, trembling. She tugged on my shirt. "Grandpa, let's go. He is scary." I looked at the guard. I looked at the line of wealthy tourists breezing past us, flashing their plastic cards. I realized that following the rules was a luxury for people who had time. I did not have time. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the money clip. I peeled off $500 bills. I folded them small into the palm of my hand. I leaned in. "Listen to me closely. I am a 70-year-old veteran with a scared child. I am not a threat to your ship. I am just a grandfather trying to fix a mistake. I need you to point me to the supervisor who handles VIP guest lists. I know there is always a list for late additions. There is always a quota for local dignitaries and emergency family visits." I pressed the folded bills into his hand. It was a smooth motion practiced over decades of getting things done in places where the rules were flexible. He looked down at his hand. Then he looked at Mia. He saw the fear in her eyes. He saw the determination in mine. The bureaucracy in his face softened just a fraction. "Go to the blue tent on the far left," he muttered, pointing away from the main crowd. "Ask for Mr. Henderson. Tell him you are looking for the friends and family excursion pass. But if he says no, you did not hear it from me." "Thank you," I said. I moved us toward the blue tent. Mr. Henderson turned out to be a young, ambitious man in a sharp suit who looked like he would sell his own mother for a promotion. He started to give me the same speech about capacity, but when I placed $2,000 in cash on his desk for 2 visitor passes, he suddenly found a loophole in the computer system. It took 20 minutes of typing, scanning passports, and issuing temporary badges. 20 minutes that felt like 20 years. But finally, he handed me 2 lanyards with plastic cards. "These are valid until 4:30, he warned. "If you are not off the ship by then, you will be sailing to Mexico." I put the lanyard around Mia's neck. It looked huge on her. We walked down the long pier. The heat was radiating off the concrete, making the air shimmer. And then the crowd parted, and we saw it. The icon of the seas. It was not a ship. It was a floating city, a monument to excess. It towered 20 decks high, blocking out the sun. It was painted in garish white and teal with water slides coiling around the top like colorful intestines. It was massive, loud, and arrogant. It was exactly the kind of thing my son Austin would love. It was a place where you could pretend the real world did not exist. I looked up at the balconies lining the side of the ship. Thousands of them. Somewhere in that metal belly, my son was drinking a cocktail paid for with his daughter's future. Somewhere in there, they were laughing. I adjusted the sunglasses on my nose. I checked the time. 12:15. I looked down at Mia. She was staring up at the ship, her mouth open. "Is that where they are, Grandpa?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "That is where they are. Are we going to yell at them?" "No," I said, taking her hand and walking toward the gangway. "We are not going to yell. Yelling is for people who do not have a plan. We are going to teach them a lesson." We stepped onto the metal ramp. The sound of our footsteps on the steel was heavy and final. We were boarding the enemy vessel. The hunt was over. The ambush was about to begin. The dining hall on Deck 15 was a cathedral of gluttony. It was called the Windjammer Marketplace, but it looked more like a Roman orgy reimagined by a corporate accountant. The air was thick with the smell of melted butter, garlic, roasting meat, and the sugary chemical tang of artificial tropical punches. It was a sensory assault. Everywhere I looked, there were mountains of food, pyramids of chilled shrimp glistening under the halogen lights, carving stations where prime rib was sliced into thick slabs by men in tall white hats, towers of desserts that defied gravity. I held Mia's hand as we navigated through the maze of tables. She was walking with a limp, not because she was injured, but because she was overwhelmed. Her eyes darted from the overflowing plates of strangers to the floor. She had spent the last 2 days rationing a loaf of moldy bread, and now she was walking through a room where people were throwing away half-eaten steaks because they were too full to finish them. The waste was obscene. It was a physical manifestation of the entitlement that had almost killed my granddaughter. I scanned the room. It was crowded, but finding them was not difficult. You just had to look for the center of attention, or at least the people who were desperately trying to be the center of attention. I saw the ring light first. It was a small portable halo of white LED light clamped onto the edge of a table near the floor-to-ceiling windows. The best seat in the house, naturally. The light was pointed directly at a woman with perfectly coiffed blonde hair and a white linen dress that probably cost more than my truck. Monica. She was holding a glass of rose wine in one hand and gesturing with the other, talking animatedly to her phone screen. She was performing. She was selling the fantasy of the perfect mother, enjoying a well-deserved break. Sitting across from her was Austin, my son. He was wearing a floral shirt unbuttoned one too many buttons down. He looked sunburnt and soft. His face was flushed with alcohol, and he was laughing at something Monica was saying to her invisible audience. In front of him sat a silver platter that took up half the table. A massive bright red lobster steamed in its shell, surrounded by mussels and corn on the cob. And then there was Leo, my 10-year-old grandson. He was sitting at the end of the table, slumped over a tablet. He was wearing noise-canceling headphones completely checked out from his parents. In front of him was a plate of chicken nuggets and fries that had gone cold. He looked bored. He looked lonely. I felt a squeeze on my hand. I looked down. Mia had stopped walking. She was staring at the table. Her lower lip was trembling. "Grandpa," she whispered. "Is that Daddy?" "Yes, honey," I said. "That is Daddy. Is he going to be mad at us for coming?" I knelt down on one knee right there in the middle of the buffet line, blocking a man with a plate full of nachos. I looked her in the eye. "He has lost the right to be mad, Mia. He has lost the right to be anything but ashamed. You stay right behind me. Do not say a word. Just watch." I stood up. I adjusted my shirt. I checked the pocket where I kept the yellow note. The paper felt heavy like a lead weight. We moved forward. I approached them from behind Austin's chair. The noise of the restaurant was deafening, but as I got closer, the world seemed to go silent. All I could hear was Monica's voice. It was high-pitched and fake, the kind of voice people use when they are talking to puppies or social media followers. "We are just so blessed, you guys," she was saying into the camera. "Austin and I have been working so hard, and we just really needed this time to reconnect as a couple. It is so important to prioritize self-care. If you do not fill your own cup, you cannot pour into others, right?" She took a sip of wine and giggled. Austin reached out and grabbed a lobster claw. He cracked it open, and the sound was like a gunshot. Juice squirted onto his chin. He laughed, wiping it away with a cloth napkin. "This is the life, baby," he said. "This is the life." They were so wrapped up in their bubble of narcissism that they did not notice the 68-year-old man and the terrified little girl standing 2 feet away from them. They did not notice the shadow I cast over their table, blocking out the Bahamian sun. I waited. I wanted them to finish their sentence. I wanted them to fully commit to the lie before I shattered it. Monica smiled at the phone. "We miss the little ones, of course, but sometimes you just have to." She stopped. Her eyes had drifted past the phone screen and landed on me. Her smile did not fade immediately. It froze. It became a rictus of confusion. Her brain could not process the data. Bill Slater was in Florida. Bill Slater was an old man who watched TV and went to bed at 9. Bill Slater was not standing on the deck of the Icon of the Seas, looking like the angel of death. "Dad!" Austin choked. He dropped the lobster claw. It clattered onto the china plate. I did not speak. Not yet. Words were too easy. I wanted an action that they could not edit out of their video. I reached into my breast pocket. My hand moved slowly, deliberately. Austin flinched as if I were reaching for a weapon. In a way, I was. I pulled out the yellow piece of notebook paper. The tape was still on the corners. The edges were still jagged where I had ripped it off the refrigerator door. I smoothed it out in my hand. Monica's phone was still recording. The comments were probably flying up the screen asking who the angry old man was. She didn't move to turn it off. She was paralyzed. I took a step forward and slapped the paper down right in the center of Austin's plate. It landed directly on top of the steaming lobster tail. The grease from the butter immediately started to soak into the papers, turning the yellow fibers translucent. But the message was still clear, written in Monica's own looping handwriting. "Be good." The silence at the table was absolute. Even Leo looked up from his iPad, pulling off one side of his headphones. Grandpa, Leo said. Mia. Austin looked at the paper, then he looked up at me. His face went from sunburnt red to a sickly pale white. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked like a fish gasping on a dock. I leaned in close. I placed my hands on the edge of the table, leaning my weight forward, so I towered over him. I could smell the expensive cologne he wore to mask the scent of his own cowardice. I hope the lobster is good, son, I said. My voice was low, but it carried the weight of a sledgehammer. I hope it tastes better than the moldy bread you left for your daughter. Monica finally found her voice. She scrambled to grab her phone, trying to end the live stream, but her hands were shaking so bad she dropped it. It landed face up on the table, still broadcasting the ceiling. "What are you doing here?" she shrieked. Her facade of the perfect hostess cracked, revealing the cornered animal underneath. "You cannot be here. This is a private vacation. Security! Someone call security!" I laughed. It was a cold, dark sound. "Go ahead, Monica. Call them. I want you to call them, because I have a video on my phone of you chaining a refrigerator shut. And I think the Bahamian police and the thousands of people currently watching your little live stream would be very interested to see it." Austin stood up, knocking his chair over. "Dad, please. Let's not do this here. People are watching. Sit down," I barked. It was the voice I used to command battalions. Austin sat. He collapsed back into his chair as if his strings had been cut. I beckoned Mia forward. She stepped out from behind me, clutching her teddy bear. She looked small against the backdrop of the ocean, but she stood her ground. "Look at her, Austin." I pointed a finger at Mia. "Look at your daughter. You told her you were going to a training camp. You told her she was too expensive to bring along. You left her in the dark to rot while you sat here cracking claws and drinking wine." Austin couldn't look. He stared at the tablecloth. "I did not know, Dad," he mumbled. "Monica said she hired a nanny. She said everything was taken care of." Liar. I slammed my hand on the table, making the silverware jump. "I saw the text messages, Austin. I saw the bank withdrawal you made by forging my signature. You knew exactly what you were doing. You stole from me and you abandoned her." I picked up the lobster plate. The butter dripped onto the white tablecloth. I held it up, looking at the grotesque excess of it. Then I looked at the yellow note stuck to the meat. "Be good." I read the note aloud. I dropped the plate back onto the table. It shattered. The sound of breaking china echoed through the dining hall. Conversations stopped. Heads turned. A hush fell over the room. "We are taking Leo," I said. "And we are taking Mia. You two can finish your meal. But when you get back to Miami, I promise you there will be a welcoming committee waiting for you that you are not going to like." I turned to Leo. "Pack your things, son. We are moving to a different room." Leo didn't hesitate. He grabbed his iPad and stood up. He walked around the table and stood next to Mia. He didn't look at his parents. Austin put his head in his hands. Monica stared at the shattered plate, the yellow note now swimming in a pool of butter and broken ceramic. "Enjoy the cruise," I said. I took Mia's hand with my left and Leo's hand with my right. We turned our backs on the window view. We turned our backs on the table. And we walked away, leaving them in the ruins of their own gluttony. The silence that followed the shattering of the lobster plate lasted exactly 3 seconds. In the military, we call this the calm before the contact. It is that brief, breathless moment when the enemy is processing the shock of the ambush before their survival instincts kick in. I expected Austin to speak. I expected him to apologize or to beg or even to get angry. But Austin did nothing. He shrank into his floral shirt, a spineless jellyfish of a man who was terrified of confrontation. But Monica was not a jellyfish. She was a viper, and I had just stepped on her tail in front of her entire digital audience. She did not cry immediately. First her eyes narrowed. She looked at the phone that was still recording face up on the table. She looked at the faces of the diners around us who were staring with open mouths. She realized that her carefully curated narrative of the perfect vacation was dissolving. She had two choices. She could admit she was a monster who abandoned a child, or she could paint me as the villain. She chose the villain. Help! She screamed. It was a blood-curdling sound, a theatrical, piercing shriek that was designed to trigger every primal protective instinct in the room. He is taking them. He is kidnapping my children. Someone help me, please. She threw herself across the table, knocking over the wine bucket. Ice and water spilled everywhere, soaking the tablecloth and dripping onto the floor. She did not care. It was part of the set dressing. She scrambled toward us, grabbing Leo's arm with a grip that looked painful. Let go of him. She hissed at me, then looked up at the crowd with tears suddenly streaming down her face. Please, he is not well. He is having an episode. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. A moment ago, I was the righteous grandfather exposing a sin. Now, to the uninformed observers, I was a crazy old man, dragging two terrified children away from their weeping mother. I felt the change in the air pressure, the hostility radiating from the surrounding tables. Monica, stop this, I said, keeping my voice low and controlled. Do not make this worse. She ignored me. She turned to a large man sitting at the next table, a tourist with sunburned shoulders who looked like he had been waiting his whole life to be a hero. He has dementia. She sobbed, pointing a shaking finger at me. He thinks it is 20 years ago. He broke into our house. He took my daughter. Look at her. Look at how scared she is. Mia, come to mommy, baby. Come here before he hurts you. Mia froze. Her small hand was sweating in mine. She looked at Monica, then she looked at me. She was terrified, but not of me. She was terrified of the woman who had locked her in the dark. But to the crowd, her fear looked like the reaction of a victim being held by her captor. I tightened my grip on her hand gently. Stay with me, Mia, I whispered. Hey, buddy. The sunburned tourist stood up, blocking my path. He was big. He wiped his mouth with a napkin and stepped into my personal space. Let the kids go. I looked him in the eye. I did not blink. Step aside, son. This is a family matter. It does not look like a family matter. It looks like you are harassing this lady, the man said, puffing out his chest. More chairs scraped against the floor. Other men were standing up now, emboldened by the first. A wall of bodies was forming between me and the exit. Phones were raised, recording every second. I could see the headlines already. Deranged veteran terrorizes family on cruise ship. I looked at Austin. He was still sitting at the table, picking at a hangnail. Austin! I barked. Tell them who I am. Tell them what you did. Austin looked up. His eyes darted around the room, seeing the angry mob, seeing his wife's performance. He saw the path of least resistance. If he supported me, he admitted to a crime. If he supported Monica, he was the victim. Dad, please. Austin said, his voice trembling just enough to sound convincingly heartbroken. Just put the kids down. We can get you help. I told you we would pay for the facility. You did not have to do this. The betrayal was so sharp I almost laughed. He was doubling down. He was using the lie about the nursing home, the lie he had used to try and steal my house, to discredit me now. The mob murmured in agreement. Oh, that is so sad. He belongs in a facility. Poor family. Monica saw she was winning. She lunged forward, not for Leo, but for Mia. She tried to snatch Mia's other hand. Get your hands off her, I snarled, stepping between them. Do not touch her. Monica screamed, recoiling as if I had hit her. She looked at the camera phones. Did you see that? He hit me. He just hit me. I had not touched her. I had simply blocked her path. But in the court of public opinion, the truth does not matter, only the angle of the camera matters. Suddenly, the doors to the restaurant burst open. "Security, move aside, make a hole." 4 men in white uniforms marched in. They were not the gate guards I had bribed. These were the ship's tactical security team. They carried tasers and zip ties. They moved with a coordination that told me they were former military or police. They assessed the scene in seconds. Screaming woman, crying children, angry crowd, and in the center of it all, an older man with a rigid posture and clenched fists. "Sir." The lead officer, a man with a thick neck and a radio clipped to his shoulder, stepped forward. His hand hovered over the taser on his belt. "I need you to release the minors and step away from the family. Now." "I am the family," I said calmly. "I am the grandfather. These children are in danger with these people. Sir, I am not going to ask you twice. Release the children. Put your hands where I can see them." I looked at Mia. If I let go now, Monica would take her. They would drag her back to that cabin. They would gaslight her into believing I was crazy. I would be thrown in the ship's brig, and by the time we reached Miami, the narrative would be set in stone. But if I resisted, if I fought back physically, I would be tackled, tased, and arrested. I would lose any legal standing I had. I would be just another violent criminal. It was a tactical checkmate. Monica knew it. She was smirking behind her hands, wiping away fake tears, while her eyes gleamed with malice. I made a calculation. I had to de-escalate physically to escalate legally. "It is okay, Mia," I said softly, kneeling down so I was eye level with her. "I am not leaving you. I promise. But I have to talk to these men. Go stand by Leo. Do not let anyone take you out of this room." I let go of her hand. It felt like letting go of a lifeline. I stood up and raised my hands, slowly showing my open palms. "I am complying," I said to the officer. "I am unarmed. I have tickets to be on this ship." The officer moved in fast. He spun me around and pushed me against the buffet counter. I felt the cold plastic of zip ties bite into my wrists. "You are hurting him," Leo shouted. He broke his silence, throwing his iPad onto the table. "Stop it. Grandpa didn't do anything. Mom is lying." The crowd went quiet. The voice of a child usually cuts through the noise. "Leo, baby, shh." Monica rushed to him, trying to hug him. "Grandpa is sick, honey. He is having a bad day. Don't listen to him. She is lying." Leo yelled, pushing her away. He pushed his own mother away with a force that surprised everyone. We left Mia. We left her at home with no food. Grandpa came to save her. Monica's face went pale. The sunburned tourist who had blocked my path looked confused. He looked from Leo to Monica. "What did the kid say?" Someone in the back asked. "Officer," I said, my voice pressed against the cold metal of the buffet. "Check my pocket." The breast pocket of my shirt. The officer hesitated. "Do it," I commanded. "Unless you want to be sued for unlawful arrest when this whole thing unravels." The officer reached into my pocket. He pulled out the yellow note. The note that was stained with lobster butter but still readable. "Read it," I said. "Read it out loud." The officer looked at the paper. He read the handwriting. "Mia, we have taken Leo to a special training camp. Be good. We are watching you on the cameras." He frowned. He looked at Monica. "Ma'am, is this your handwriting?" Monica stammered. Her eyes darted around the room. "No. I mean, yes." But he wrote it. He made me write it. He forced me. He is controlling. He threatened us. That is why we had to come on this cruise, to get away from him. It was a weak lie. A desperate lie. And for the first time, the crowd wasn't buying it. You don't go on a luxury cruise to escape an abuser while leaving your child behind in his reach. I turned my head to look at Austin. Austin, I said, this is your last chance. Look at your son. Look at Leo. He is 10 years old and he has more courage than you. Are you going to let your wife lie to the police? Are you going to let your father be arrested for saving your daughter? Austin looked at me. Sweat was pouring down his face. He looked at the zip ties on my wrists. He looked at the security guards. Austin started. Shut up, Austin, Monica hissed. Don't say a word. Austin closed his mouth. He looked down at his shoes. I closed my eyes. The pain of the zip ties was nothing compared to the pain of that silence. My son was gone. The boy I raised, the boy I taught to ride a bike and catch a ball, was dead. There was only this husk left, this hollow shell filled with fear and greed. Fine. I opened my eyes. Officer, I have evidence. Hard evidence. I have the security footage from inside their house time-stamped from 2 days ago. I have the bank records of the money they stole from me to pay for this trip. And I have the recording of the call my granddaughter made to me at 2 a.m, begging for water because her parents locked the fridge. I looked straight at Monica. Her smirk was gone. I want to see the captain, I said. And I want the FBI contact in Miami on the line. Because this is not a family dispute anymore. This is a federal crime scene. The officer looked at the note again. He looked at the terrified little girl clinging to her brother. He looked at the woman in the expensive dress, who was suddenly very quiet. Uncut him, the officer said to his partner. But keep eyes on him. We are going to the captain's office, all of us. The zip ties were cut. I rubbed my wrists. I did not celebrate. I did not smile. I walked over to Mia and Leo. I put my hands on their shoulders. Let's go, I said to them. We walked out of the restaurant surrounded by guards. The crowd parted for us this time, not with hostility, but with a heavy, uncomfortable silence. They didn't know who to believe yet. But they knew one thing. The party was over. The vacation was dead, and the real storm was just beginning. The security officer held my phone like it was a live grenade. The screen was cracked slightly at the corner, a scar from when I dropped it in the garage rushing to get to Mia, but the display was bright and clear. I had set the brightness to maximum. I wanted every pixel of their cruelty to be visible. I unlocked the device with my thumb. My hands were steady now. The adrenaline of the physical confrontation had faded, replaced by the cold precision of the objective. I navigated to the cloud storage app connected to the home security system. I selected the clip dated 2 days ago at 9:30 in the evening. Volume up, I said to the officer. He pressed the side button. The video began to play. The timestamp in the corner counted the seconds of their betrayal. The angle was wide, covering the entire kitchen and living room area. In the video, the house was brightly lit. Suitcases were lined up by the door. Monica walked into the frame. She was wearing a white travel outfit, looking fresh and excited. She was holding a heavy coil of chain and a padlock. Austin followed her. He looked nervous, pacing back and forth. Are you sure about this Monday? Austin's voice on the recording was tinny but unmistakable. What if there is a fire? What if she needs to get out? She will be fine, Austin, stop being such a baby. Monica's voice cut through the speaker, sharp and dismissive. She is not going to starve. There is a loaf of bread on the counter. That is more than she deserves after what she did to my white rug. Besides, if we leave the fridge open, she will eat everything. You know how she is. She is a bottomless pit. We are not paying to restock the whole house when we get back. On the small screen, Monica began to thread the bicycle chain through the handles of the stainless steel refrigerator. The metal clanked against the expensive appliance. She wrapped it tight once, twice, 3 times. Then she clicked the heavy padlock shut. She gave it a yank to test it. Perfect. She dusted her hands off. Now let's go, the taxi is here. And make sure you locked her bedroom door from the outside. I do not want her wandering around while we are gone. The video ended. The officer lowered the phone. He looked at the black screen for a long moment, then he looked up at Monica. His expression had changed completely. The professional detachment was gone. In its place was a look of pure, unadulterated disgust. It was the look you give to something you scrape off the bottom of your shoe. Is this real? He asked, his voice quiet and dangerous. Monica opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She looked around the room, searching for an ally, searching for anyone who would still believe her performance. But the audience had turned. The crowd of diners who had been ready to tackle me a minute ago were now staring at her with horror. The mothers in the room were clutching their own children tighter. The sunburned man who had blocked my path stepped back from Austin, as if he were contagious. "You locked a kid in a house," the sunburned man said. His voice broke the silence. "You chained the fridge." It was out of context. Monica screeched. Her voice was high and desperate, cracking under the strain. "You do not understand. She has food issues. The doctor said we have to control her intake. It was for her own good." Liar. The word came from a woman at a nearby table. She stood up, shaking with rage. "I am a pediatrician. There is no doctor on earth who prescribes a padlock and a loaf of bread for an 8-year-old. You are a monster." "Yeah, shame on you," another voice shouted. "Call the police." Someone else yelled. The room erupted. The murmurs turned into a roar of condemnation. Phones were raised again, but this time they were not recording a crazy old man. They were recording a child abuser. They were documenting the fall of the perfect family. Austin shrank back against the window. He looked like he wanted to jump into the ocean. He pulled at his collar, sweating profusely. "Dad," he whispered. "Dad, make them stop." "You made your choice, Austin," I said. I told you I would handle it." The officer spoke into his radio. His voice was urgent. "Control, this is Alpha 1. I have a code red situation in the Windjammer. I need the captain and the staff captain immediately. We have a confirm on child endangerment. I repeat, confirm. We need an isolation team." Monica lunged for the phone, trying to snatch it from the officer's hand. "Delete that," she screamed. "You cannot show that. That is private property. That is inside my house. You are violating my privacy." The officer caught her wrist. He did not twist it, he just held it firm. "Ma'am, do not touch me. Step back." Suddenly the crowd parted. A hush fell over the room again, but this was different. This was the silence of authority. Captain Johansson walked in. He was a tall man with silver hair and 4 gold stripes on his shoulder boards. He moved with the weight of maritime law. He did not look at the crowd. He did not look at the food. He looked straight at his security officer. "Report," the captain said. The officer handed him my phone. He played the video again. The captain watched it. He watched the chain. He heard the voice. He watched it all the way to the end without blinking. When it was finished, he handed the phone back to the officer. He turned to Austin and Monica. His face was like granite. "In 30 years at sea," the captain said, his voice low and resonant, "I have seen smugglers. I have seen brawls. I have seen people at their absolute worst. But I have never seen anything quite as cowardly as this. Captain, please." Monica tried to turn on the charm, batting her eyelashes. "It is a misunderstanding. My father-in-law, he is very vindictive. Be quiet." The captain's voice cracked like a whip. "You have no rights on this vessel anymore. You are not guests. You are liabilities. He turned to the security team. Escort Mr. and Mrs. Slater to the brig. They are to be confined to separate holding cells until we reach the port of Miami. They are not to have contact with anyone. Confiscate their devices. But we paid for a suite. Austin protested weakly. We paid $20,000. Your refund will be processed by the prison system, the captain said. Get them out of my sight. 2 guards stepped forward. They took Austin and Monica by the arms. There were no zip ties this time, just firm, unyielding grips. Monica began to scream as they dragged her toward the exit. She screamed that she was going to sue. She screamed that she was famous. She screamed that I had ruined her life. I watched them go. I watched my son being marched out of the restaurant, head bowed in shame, while the entire room booed and hissed. I felt a pang of sorrow deep in my chest, but I strangled it. He had made his bed. Now he had to sleep in it. The captain turned to me. His expression softened slightly, but he remained professional. Mr. Slater, he said. I assume you are the grandfather. I am, I said. And these are the children. Yes, sir. You have done a brave thing today, the captain said. But we have procedures. I cannot let you walk around the ship. We have legal protocols for custody disputes. I understand, I said. I am not asking for a vacation, Captain. I just want them safe. We have a guest cabin near the bridge. It is secure. You and the children will stay there until we dock. My staff will bring you food. Real food. He looked down at Mia. She was hiding behind my leg, clutching her bear. Young lady, the captain said, kneeling down. Do you like burgers? Mia nodded slowly. I will have the chef send up the biggest cheeseburger on the ship. And maybe a milkshake. Would you like that? Mia smiled. A real smile. Yes, please. The captain stood up. Follow me. We walked out of the dining hall. We walked past the tables of half-eaten food. We walked past the staring crowds. But this time, we walked with our heads high. I held Mia's hand on my left and Leo's hand on my right. The walk of shame for my son was a victory march for us. We were leaving the chaos behind. We were going to a quiet room. We were going to be safe. And for the first time in 2 days, I allowed myself to take a deep breath. The air in the hallway smelled clean. It smelled like justice. The guest cabin near the bridge was not a prison cell, but it felt like a bunker. It was small, functional, and silent. The only sound was the hum of the ship's ventilation system and the rhythmic chewing of 2 hungry children. Mia and Leo sat on the floor, their backs against the bed, devouring the cheeseburgers the captain had promised. They ate with a kind of desperate focus that made my chest ache. They were not just filling their stomachs, they were filling a void of safety that had been hollowed out by their own parents. I sat in the single armchair by the porthole, watching the ocean churn below us. The water was a deep bruised purple in the fading light. We were moving. The ship was still sailing toward its next destination, but for us, the journey had stopped. We were in limbo, waiting for the real world to catch up with us in Miami. I checked my watch. It had been 2 hours since the scene in the restaurant. 2 hours since I watched my son being dragged away by security. I should have felt triumphant. I had completed the mission. I had secured the targets. But all I felt was a heavy, cold exhaustion. It is a specific kind of fatigue that comes from realizing your entire legacy, the bloodline you worked so hard to protect, has curdled into something unrecognizable. There was a soft knock on the door. I stiffened. I expected the captain or maybe a steward collecting the plates. Stay there, I told the kids. I walked to the door and opened it just a crack. It was not a steward. It was Austin. He looked terrible. His floral shirt was torn at the shoulder, probably from the struggle with security. His face was blotchy and swollen. He was not wearing handcuffs, which surprised me. Standing behind him was a young security guard who looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot. "I told him I needed to give you Leo's asthma inhaler," Austin whispered. He would not look me in the eye. He looked at the doorframe. "Please, Dad. Just 5 minutes." I looked at the guard. "He has 5 minutes, sir," the guard said, checking his watch. "Captain's orders are strict confinement, but Mr. Slater insisted it was a medical emergency for the boy. I knew Leo did not have asthma. He never had. It was another lie, another manipulation. Austin was using a fake medical conditions to buy time, just like he used fake love to buy validation. I stepped back and opened the door wide enough for him to slip in. "Make it quick," I said. Austin stepped inside. The moment the door clicked shut, the mask fell. He did not look for Leo. He did not ask about the inhaler. He did not even look at the children eating on the floor. He turned to me and grabbed my arm. His hands were clammy. "You have to drop the charges," he hissed. His voice was a frantic, desperate rattle. "You have to tell the captain it was a misunderstanding. You have to tell them you overreacted." I pulled my arm away as if he were burning me. "Is that why you are here?" I asked, my voice low so the kids would not hear the worst of it. "To ask me to lie for you." Again. "Dad, listen to me." Austin ran a hand through his messy hair. "You do not understand what is at stake. The bank. If I get charged with a felony, if there is a police record involving fraud or child neglect, I lose my license. I lose the branch. I lose everything." I stared at him. I waited for the part where he asked about Mia. I waited for the part where he asked if his daughter was okay after being locked in a dark house for 48 hours. It did not come. "You are worried about the bank," I said. "I am worried about our lives," Austin pleaded. His eyes were wide and manic. "We have a mortgage, we have car payments. Monica, she is going to leave me if the money stops. She told me. She said she cannot be with a loser. You are destroying my marriage, Dad." I looked at him, and for the first time in my life, I did not see my son. I saw a stranger. I saw a weak, pathetic man who had built a castle on a foundation of sand and was now blaming the tide for coming in. "I am not destroying your marriage, Austin," I said, stepping into his personal space, forcing him to back up against the small desk. "You destroyed it the moment you let that woman put a chain on your refrigerator. You destroyed it the moment you forged my signature to steal from a child." "It was a loan," Austin cried. "I was going to pay it back. I just needed to double it. There was this crypto tip." "Stop." I held up a hand. "Just stop." I walked over to the kids. Leo had stopped eating. He was watching his father with a look of profound disappointment. It is a look no parent should ever have to see on their child's face. It is the look of a hero dying. Austin finally noticed them. He tried to compose himself. He put on a shaky smile. "Hey, buddy," he said to Leo. "Hey, Mia." Mia shrank back against the bed, pulling her knees to her chest. She hid her face behind the teddy bear. She did not want to see him. Leo just stared. "Do you have my inhaler, Dad?" Leo asked. His voice was flat. Austin blinked. "What?" "You told the guard you had my inhaler," Leo said. "But I do not have asthma." "So that was a lie, right? Just like the training camp was a lie." Austin's mouth opened and closed. He looked at me for help. He wanted me to smooth it over. He wanted me to tell the lie for him. I stayed silent. "Dad." Austin turned back to me, his voice cracking. "Please. I am your son." Doesn't that mean anything? You always taught me that family sticks together. You said we protect our own. I did teach you that, I said. I taught you that a man protects his family. But you are not the protector, Austin. You are the threat. I walked to the porthole and looked out at the darkness again. Do you know what I found in the fridge? I asked without turning around. Austin did not answer. I found steak. I found shrimp. I found a cake that said Happy Vacation. I turned to face him. You locked a hungry child in a house with a cake she could see but could not touch. That is not just neglect, Austin. That is torture. That is something a sadist does. It was Monica. Austin blubbered. She has this thing about weight. She says Mia is getting heavy. She says, "You are a coward." I cut him off. You are a coward who hides behind his wife's cruelty because it is easier than being a man. You let her starve your daughter because you didn't want to have an argument. You let her steal my money because you were too scared to tell her you were broke. I took a step closer to him. And now you are here not to apologize to Mia, but to beg me to save your job. You are afraid of losing your title. You are afraid of the neighbors finding out you are not the big-shot banker you pretend to be. You are afraid of being poor. I leaned in until I could smell the fear on him. Well, get used to it, son. Because poor is exactly what you are going to be. Austin's face crumbled. He fell to his knees. He actually knelt on the carpet of the cabin, grasping at my pants leg. Dad, please. I will do anything. I will go to therapy. I will pay you back. Just don't let them file the charges. Tell the captain it was a mistake. Tell him I am a good father. I looked down at him. I remembered the day he was born. I remembered holding him in the hospital parking lot, promising to keep him safe. I realized now that keeping him safe had been my biggest mistake. I had shielded him from consequences his whole life. I had bailed him out of bad grades, bad debts, and bad decisions. I had created this monster by refusing to let him fail. I pulled my leg away. Stand up, I commanded. He stood up, sniffling, wiping his nose on his sleeve. I am not going to save you this time, Austin, I said. I am done. The bank is going to know. The police are going to know. And the world is going to know. You are going to lose the house. You are going to lose the cars. You are going to lose Monica because sharks do not stick around when the blood is in the water. But you will gain something. I pointed to the door. You will gain the truth. For the first time in your life, you are going to face the reality of who you are. Austin looked at me with hatred now. The begging was gone, replaced by the ugly spite of a spoiled child denied a toy. You are enjoying this, he spat. You always wanted me to fail. You never thought I was good enough. You with your medals and your war stories. You judge everyone. You think you are God. No, I said calmly. I am just a logistics officer, and I am clearing out the dead weight. The knock came at the door. Time is up, the guard called from the hallway. Austin stared at me for one last second. His eyes were full of venom. I hope you rot, he whispered. He turned and walked out. He did not say goodbye to his children. He did not look back. The door clicked shut. The silence returned. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. My hands were shaking not from fear, but from the sheer effort of cutting the cord. It is a terrible thing to amputate a part of yourself, but sometimes it is the only way to save the rest of the body. I turned back to the kids. Leo had put his burger down. He was crying silently, big tears rolling down his cheeks. Grandpa, he choked out. Is Dad going to jail? I walked over and sat down between them. I put one arm around Leo and one arm around Mia. I pulled them close into a tight huddle. Yes, Leo, I said. I will not lie to you. He is going to jail. Leo buried his face in my chest. Mia leaned her head on my shoulder. Is it my fault? Leo asked. Because I told the truth. No. I kissed the top of his head. It is never your fault for telling the truth. The truth is the only thing that is going to save us. Your dad is going to jail because of what he did not, because of what you said. We sat there for a long time, the three of us in that small cabin floating in the middle of the ocean. Outside, the night was black and endless, but inside we had food. We had safety, and we had the clean, painful clarity of the end. The hunt was over. Now we just had to survive the aftermath. The silence in the cabin after Austin left was heavier than the steel hull of the ship. It was the kind of silence that rings in your ears. I locked the door and engaged the deadbolt. Then I dragged the heavy armchair over and wedged it under the handle. It was not standard maritime procedure, but I was done taking chances. I was done trusting locks that other people had keys to. Mia had not moved from her spot on the floor. She was picking at the sesame seeds on the remaining half of her burger. Her eyes were red and swollen. She looked like a soldier who had survived the battle but lost the war. Grandpa, she whispered, why does Daddy hate me? I knelt down in front of her. My knees cracked a sound that seemed too loud in the small room. He does not hate you, Mia, I said, choosing my words with the precision of a bomb disposal technician. He hates himself. And people who hate themselves are dangerous because they try to break everyone around them so they do not have to feel small alone. You are just the mirror he is afraid to look into. She did not understand. How could she? She was 8. But she leaned into me and I held her. 10 minutes later, there was another sound at the door. It was not a knock. It was a scratch. A timid rhythmic scratching like a stray dog asking for shelter. I stood up. I moved the chair. I checked the peephole. It was Leo. My biological grandson was standing in the hallway. He was wearing his pajamas, silk ones with a designer logo on the pocket. He was holding a pillow under one arm and his shoes in the other hand. He looked terrified. He kept looking back down the corridor toward the elevators, as if he expected a monster to burst out and devour him. I opened the door. Leo didn't say a word. He just stepped inside and slipped past me. He moved with a stealth I didn't know he possessed. He went straight to the corner of the room furthest from the door and sat down. I locked the door again. I put the chair back. I turned to look at him. Leo was sitting with his knees pulled up to his chin. He was rocking back and forth slightly. Leo, I said softly. What are you doing here, son? He looked up. His face was streaked with tears. His lower lip was bleeding where he had chewed it raw. Mom is throwing things, he whispered. She threw the lamp. She threw the ice bucket. She said it is all my fault because I opened my big mouth in the restaurant. She said I am a traitor. She said she is going to send me to military school when we get back. I felt a surge of anger so hot, it almost burned my throat. Monica was taking her humiliation out on a 10-year-old boy. She was punishing him for having the moral compass she lacked. You are not a traitor, Leo, I said, walking over to him. You are the bravest person on this ship. Leo shook his head violently. No, I am not. I am a liar. I am just like them. He looked across the room at Mia. Mia was watching him warily, hugging her teddy bear. The distance between them on the carpet was only 5 feet, but it felt like an ocean. They had been raised in the same house but in 2 different worlds. Leo the prince and Mia the servant. Leo took a deep breath. He reached into his pajama pocket. He pulled out something small and wrapped in a napkin. He held it out to Mia. I saved this for you, he said. From dinner. Before Grandpa came. Mia hesitated. She looked at me. I nodded. She crawled forward and took the napkin. She opened it. Inside was a chocolate truffle. It was slightly melted from the heat of Leo's pocket, but to Mia it looked like a diamond. "Why didn't you wake me up, Leo?" Mia asked. Her voice was not angry, just sad. "That night, why didn't you tell me you were leaving?" This was the question that had been hanging over us for 48 hours. Leo looked down at his hands. He began to pick at his cuticles, tearing the skin. "Mom told me that if I woke you up, we couldn't go," he said, his voice shaking. "She said the cruise was only for 3 people. She said if I told you or if I made a noise, she would return my PlayStation. And she said—" He stopped. He choked on a sob. "She said what, Leo?" I asked gently. "She said you were bad." Leo cried. "She told me you stole money from her purse. She said you were dangerous and that we had to leave you behind to teach you a lesson. She said if I loved her, I would help her teach you." Mia stared at him. "I didn't steal," she whispered. "I know." Leo sobbed. "I know you didn't. But I wanted to believe her. Because I wanted to go on the big boat with the slides. I was selfish. I just wanted to go swimming." He buried his face in his pillow and wept. It was a guttural, ugly sound. The sound of a child's innocence breaking under the weight of adult manipulation. I watched him, and I realized the depth of Monica's crime. She hadn't just neglected Mia. She had weaponized Leo. She had turned him into an accomplice against his will. She had bought his silence with toys and poisoned his mind with lies, forcing him to choose between his sister and his mother's love. That is a burden no child should ever carry. Mia moved then. She put the chocolate down. She crawled the rest of the distance between them. She reached out and put her hand on Leo's shoulder. "It is okay, Leo," she said. Leo looked up. His eyes were wide with disbelief. "How can it be okay? I left you. You were in the dark. But you came back," Mia said simply. "You told the truth to the policeman, and you brought me chocolate." Leo dropped his pillow. He threw his arms around his sister. Mia hugged him back. They held on to each other, 2 survivors of a shipwreck clinging to the same piece of driftwood. I sat on the edge of the bed and watched them. My heart felt like it was expanding and breaking at the same time. For years, I had thought of Leo as Austin's son. I saw the entitlement in him. I saw the way he ignored Mia. I saw the way he demanded expensive gifts. I had distanced myself from him, thinking he was a lost cause, just another clone of his parents. I was wrong. He was not a clone. He was a hostage. He was a victim of the golden child syndrome, just as Mia was a victim of the scapegoat dynamic. They were both abused, just in different ways. Mia was starved of food. Leo was fed a diet of materialism and emotional blackmail. I realized then that my mission had changed. When I boarded this ship, I came to rescue Mia. I came to take her away and leave Austin and Monica to rot in their own mess. I thought I would leave Leo with them. I thought he belonged to their world. But looking at him now crying in his sister's arms, I knew I could not leave him. If I left him, he would be destroyed. Monica would punish him for this betrayal for the rest of his life. She would crush his spirit until he became just like Austin, a spineless man ruled by fear. I could not let that happen. I stood up and walked to the small bathroom. I wet a washcloth with cold water. I came back and knelt beside them. "Wipe your face, son." I handed the cloth to Leo. He took it and wiped his eyes. He looked at me with a mixture of fear and hope. "Are you going to send me back there, Grandpa?" he asked. "To their room?" "No," I said. "But Mom said I have to. She said she is calling the lawyer." "Let her call," I said. Let her call the Pope for all I care. You are not going back to that room. You are staying here with me and Mia, but where will I sleep? Leo looked around the tiny cabin. There is only one bed. I smiled. It was the first genuine smile I had felt in days. Have you ever built a bunker, soldier? Leo shook his head. Well, you are about to learn. I stood up, grabbed the pillows. Mia grabbed the blankets. We moved the furniture. We pulled the mattress off the frame and put it on the floor. We took the cushions from the armchair. We built a fortress of pillows and sheets right there in the center of the room. It was not a luxury suite. It was not the icon of the sea's royal loft. It was a pile of bedding on the floor of a guest cabin. But as the three of us crawled into it, huddled together under the duvet, it felt like the safest place on earth. Grandpa, Leo whispered in the dark. Yes, Leo. Are you going to take us home? I am, I said. Both of us, he asked. I reached out in the darkness and found his hand. I found Mia's hand with my other one. I squeezed them both. Listen to me, I said, my voice fierce and low in the quiet room. I am not just your grandfather anymore. I am your guardian, and I do not care what lawyers your parents hire. I do not care how much money it costs. I am going to fight for both of you. You are a package deal now, Team Slater, and no one gets left behind. Not ever again. Promise, Mia whispered. I promise, I said. I lay there listening to their breathing slow down as they drifted off to sleep. They were exhausted. But I was wide awake. My mind was already back in logistics mode, planning the next phase of the operation. Getting off the ship was the easy part. The hard part would be the court battle. Austin would fight for Leo not because he loved him, but because Leo was an asset. Leo was the heir. Leo was the proof that they were a normal family. Losing Mia was an embarrassment, but losing Leo would be an ego death for Austin. He would fight dirty. He would use every trick, every lie, every ounce of leverage he had. But he didn't know what I had. He didn't know about the trust fund documents I had kept from 20 years ago. He didn't know about the clauses in the deed to his house. He didn't know that I had spent my career preparing for worst-case scenarios. I looked at the ceiling of the cabin. Sleep well, kids, I thought. Because when we land in Miami, Grandpa is going to war. And I have never lost a war. I stepped into the bathroom of the small cabin and closed the door until it clicked softly. The space was tight, barely big enough for a man of my size to turn around in. The harsh fluorescent light buzzed overhead, casting long shadows against the white tile. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. My eyes were rimmed with red, and the lines around my mouth seemed deeper than they had been this morning. I looked like a man who had been fighting a war for 20 years instead of 2 days. I sat on the closed lid of the toilet and pulled the satellite phone from my pocket. It was a heavy brick of a device that the captain had loaned me, explaining that it was the only secure line that could not be monitored by the ship's general switchboard. I dialed the number for Rachel Stein. Rachel was not a family lawyer in the traditional sense. She did not handle amicable divorces or estate planning for retirees who wanted to leave their porcelain cat collection to their nieces. Rachel was a shark. I had met her 10 years ago when the Army was dealing with a complex contracting dispute involving millions of dollars in logistics supply chains. She was the kind of lawyer who walked into a room and the temperature dropped 10 degrees. She did not have sympathy. She had strategy. And right now, I did not need a shoulder to cry on. I needed a weapon. She answered on the second ring. Bill. Her voice was crisp, clear, and completely devoid of sleepiness, even though I knew it was past midnight in Florida. I have been waiting for your call. I assumed you are on the ship. I am, I said. It is done. I have the kids. Austin and Monica are in the brig. Good, she said. That simplifies the custody arrangement. Abandonment is hard to argue against when you are in a holding cell on a cruise ship. But Bill, we have a bigger problem. I rubbed my forehead. I thought the problem was the $25,000 Austin stole from the account. That is the tip of the iceberg, Rachel said. Her voice dropped lower the way it always did when she was delivering the kind of news that ruins lives. After you called me about the withdrawal, I ran a full asset check on Austin. I wanted to see if he had hidden the money in an offshore account or a shell company. I did not find the money, Bill. But I found debt. A lot of it. How much? I asked. Bill, are you sitting down? I am. Austin has been leveraging everything he touches for the last 18 months, Rachel said. It started with credit cards. He maxed out 5 of them. Then he took out personal loans, the unsecured kind with 20% interest rates. He blew through all of that. But that was not enough. She paused. The silence on the line was thick with static from the satellite connection. He forged a power of attorney document 6 months ago, she said. He used it to take out a home equity line of credit on your house. The house you live in. The house you own free and clear. Or at least the house you thought you owned free and clear. I felt the blood drain from my face. My hand gripped the phone so hard the plastic creaked. My house, I whispered. The house I built with my wife, Sarah. The house where we raised Austin. The house that was supposed to be the safety net for Mia and Leo. He took out $300,000 against the equity. Rachel continued relentlessly. And he did not stop there. When the banks cut him off, he went to private lenders. I am looking at a lien filed against his car and a threatening letter from a loan company based in a strip mall in Hialeah that specializes in high-risk borrowers. Bill, these are not nice people. These are the kind of people who charge 50% interest and collect with baseball bats. I closed my eyes. I could see it all now. The desperation in Austin's eyes when he came to the cabin. He wasn't just afraid of losing his job. He was afraid for his life. He had dug a hole so deep that he couldn't see the sky anymore, and instead of asking for a ladder, he had decided to dig deeper, hoping to come out on the other side. Where did the money go, Rachel? I asked. $300,000 plus the loans plus the theft. Where is it? Crypto. She said the word with the same disdain she would use for a contagious disease. He bought into a speculative coin scheme that crashed last month. He lost 80% of it in 48 hours. He was trying to win it back. That is why he stole the $25,000 from you. It wasn't just for the cruise. He was gambling on the market from his phone trying to hit a jackpot to pay off the sharks before you found out. I felt a wave of nausea. It was the sickness of realization. My son was not just a bad father. He was a financial suicide bomber. He had strapped a vest of debt to our entire family and pulled the pin. What does this mean for the house? I asked. It means the bank is going to foreclose, Rachel said. The payments on the equity line have not been made in 3 months. They are preparing the notice of default as we speak. If we do nothing, you will lose the house. You will lose the land. You will be on the street in 60 days. I sat there in the cold, white bathroom, listening to the hum of the ventilation fan. 60 days. I was 68 years old. I had a pension and some savings, but I could not buy a new house in this market. And I certainly couldn't raise 2 traumatized children in a 1-bedroom rental apartment. Austin had not just abandoned his children for a vacation. He had stolen their home. What are my options? I asked. Rachel took a breath. This is where it gets ugly, Bill. You have 2 choices. Choice A is you accept the debt. You try to pay it off. You liquidate your retirement savings. You sell your truck. You maybe sell the land to pay the bank. You save Austin from criminal charges, but you bankrupt yourself and the children's future. And choice B? I asked, knowing the answer before she gave it. Choice B is the nuclear option, Rachel said. We claim fraud. We go to the police and the bank, and we file a sworn affidavit that you did not sign that power of attorney. We prove that Austin forged your signature. If we do that, the bank has to eat the loss. The debt becomes invalid because it was acquired through criminal identity theft. You keep the house. You keep your savings. But Austin goes to prison, I said. Yes, Rachel said, and not for a weekend. We are talking about bank fraud, wire fraud, and identity theft involving a senior citizen. That is a federal crime with mandatory minimum sentencing. He is looking at 10 years, Bill. Maybe 15. 10 years. My son. I looked at the bathroom door. Beyond it, my grandchildren were sleeping in a fort made of pillows. They had finally found a moment of peace. They believed I could protect them. They believed Grandpa could fix anything. If I chose option A, if I tried to save Austin, I would be breaking my promise to them. I would be throwing away the resources I needed to send them to college, to feed them, to give them a stable home. I would be sacrificing the innocent to save the guilty. But if I chose option B, I would be the one putting the handcuffs on my own son. I would be the one testifying against him. I would be the one sending him to a cage for a decade. Bill. Rachel's voice cut through my thoughts. I need to know what you want to do. The bank opens in 5 hours. If we are going to file the fraud claim, we need to do it before the foreclosure process advances. We need to strike first. I stood up. I looked in the mirror again. The man looking back at me was crying. A single tear tracked through the stubble on my cheek, but his eyes were hard. They were the eyes of a commander who had just ordered an airstrike on his own position to stop the enemy from advancing. Austin had made his choice. He made it when he picked up the pen to forge my name. He made it when he locked the fridge. He made it when he chose greed over family. Now I had to make mine. I thought about the yellow note on the lobster. Be good. Austin had never been good. He had been spoiled. He had been protected. And that protection had rotted him from the inside out. Saving him now wouldn't help him. It would just enable him to destroy whatever was left. Rachel, I said. I am here, Bill. File the charges. There was a pause on the other end. A moment of respect. Are you sure? She asked. Once I send this packet to the FBI, there is no taking it back. The federal prosecutor will pick it up immediately. I am sure. I said, my voice steady. He stole my house. He stole my grandchildren's future. He is not my son anymore, Rachel. He is a liability. Cut him loose. Understood, Rachel said. I will have the papers ready for you to sign when you dock in Miami. I will meet you at the pier with the agents. One more thing, I said. Yes, the loan sharks, the ones in Hialeah. I will handle them, Rachel said, and I could practically hear her smiling. I will send a cease and desist letter attached to the federal fraud filing. Once they know the FBI is involved and that the debt is tied to a criminal investigation, they will scatter like cockroaches. They do not want federal heat. They will write off the debt and disappear. Thank you, Rachel. Get some sleep, Bill. You have a war to fight tomorrow. I hung up the phone. I sat there for another minute, just breathing. I felt lighter. The decision was terrible, but it was right. It was the surgical removal of a tumor. I washed my face with cold water. I dried my hands. I unlocked the bathroom door and stepped back into the cabin. The room was dark and quiet. I walked over to the pillow fort. Mia was sleeping with her thumb near her mouth, holding onto Leo's sleeve. Leo was snoring softly, his face relaxed and young again, free from the stress of his mother's expectations. I lay down on the floor next to them. I didn't have a pillow, but I didn't care. I put my arm over them, creating a physical shield. Austin was going to lose everything. He was going to lose his freedom, his reputation, and his family. He would spend the next 10 years in a concrete box, wondering where it all went wrong. But this house, this family, the three of us lying on this floor, we were going to be okay. We were going to keep the house. We were going to plant a garden. We were going to bake cookies that didn't cost money. I closed my eyes. The ship rocked gently, carrying us toward the dawn. I was ready. I was the firewall, and nothing was ever going to burn these children again. The return journey to Miami was a blur of gray water and heavy silence. The icon of the seas, which had seemed like a floating paradise 2 days ago, now felt like a massive cage. When the thrusters finally fired to push the behemoth into its berth at the port of Miami, the vibration rattled the teeth in my skull. It was the sound of reality crashing back into our lives. I stood on the lower gangway deck holding Mia and Leo's hands. We were not disembarking with the other passengers. We were not part of the happy sunburned herd dragging their duty-free liquor and souvenirs toward customs. We were being escorted by the staff captain and 2 security officers through a service exit. Ahead of us, flanked by 4 guards, walked Austin and Monica. They looked like ghosts of the people they used to be. Austin's floral shirt was wrinkled and stained with sweat. He walked with his head down, staring at his expensive loafers as if they were the only things keeping him tethered to the earth. Monica, however, was still trying to maintain an illusion. She had reapplied her makeup. She had brushed her hair. She walked with her chin up, looking straight ahead, refusing to acknowledge the guards holding her arms. She was marching toward her doom, with the arrogance of someone who still believed she could speak to a manager and have the charges removed. We stepped off the metal ramp and onto the concrete of the pier. The heat of Florida hit us instantly. It was humid, sticky, and smelled of diesel fuel and ocean salt. But unlike the heat in Nassau, which felt like a vacation, this heat felt like an interrogation room. Waiting for us at the bottom of the ramp were not taxi drivers or tour guides. There were 3 black SUVs with government plates. Standing beside them were 4 officers in tactical vests with FBI printed in bold yellow letters on their backs, and 2 uniformed Miami-Dade police officers. And standing right in front of them, looking like a statue carved from ice and granite, was Rachel Stein, my lawyer. She held a thick manila folder in her hands. She didn't smile when she saw me. She simply nodded a sharp, professional acknowledgement that the package had been delivered. The ship security team stopped at the bottom of the ramp. They handed paperwork to the lead FBI agent, a tall man with sunglasses and a jawline that looked like it could chew through steel. Austin stopped walking. He looked at the cars. He looked at the guns on the officers' hips. The reality of the situation finally pierced through his denial. His knees buckled slightly, and the guard had to hold him up. Monica, however, stopped and let out a scoff of disbelief. "Is this necessary?" she demanded, her voice shrill and loud, echoing off the metal hull of the ship. "All this drama for a family misunderstanding. Do you know how much taxes we pay? We are platinum members with this cruise line." The lead FBI agent stepped forward. He did not remove his sunglasses. "Monica Slater?" he asked. "Mrs. Slater," she corrected him, snapping her fingers. "And I demand to speak to my lawyer before you, Monica Slater and Austin Slater." The agent interrupted, his voice flat and bored. "You are under arrest for federal bank fraud, wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, and child endangerment across state lines." He gestured to the uniformed officers. "Cuff them." "No!" Monica shrieked. She pulled her arm away from the ship security guard, only to have it grabbed instantly by a police officer. "You cannot touch me. This is a prank, right? Bill put you up to this." She spun around, searching for me. Her eyes landed on where I stood 10 feet back, shielding the children. "Bill, tell them." She screamed, "Tell them you are senile. Tell them you forgot you signed the papers. Stop this right now. It is not funny anymore." I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had tormented my granddaughter, who had turned my son into a thief, who had lived like a queen on stolen money. I felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no pity, just the cold satisfaction of a balance sheet finally zeroing out. "I did not sign anything, Monica," I said calmly. "And neither did Austin. Not legally." Liar. She lunged toward me, but the handcuffs clicked shut around her wrists. The sound was sharp and final. "You are jealous. You are a jealous old man who wants to ruin our happiness because you are miserable. You are trying to sabotage my career. Do you know how many followers I have? I am going to live stream this. I am going to destroy you." "Check her pockets," the agent ordered. An officer patted her down and pulled out her phone. "Hey, give that back. That is my property," Monica yelled, thrashing against the restraint. "It is evidence now, ma'am," the officer said, bagging it. Austin did not fight. When the officer approached him, he turned around slowly and offered his wrists. He was crying silently. He looked over the officer's shoulder at me. He mouthed 2 words. "I am sorry." I didn't respond. Apologies without restitution are just noise, and Austin had nothing left to offer but noise. They marched them toward the SU-Vahos. The scene was attracting attention now. Dock workers stopped their forklifts. Passengers looking down from the balconies of the ship pointed and took photos. Monica Slater was finally getting the fame she always wanted. She was the center of attention. She was the main character. But the genre of her story had changed from a lifestyle vlog to a true crime documentary. As they pushed Austin into the back of the first vehicle, he looked at Leo. "Leo, son." Austin called out, his voice cracking. "Be good, okay? Listen to Grandpa. I will call you." Leo stood beside me, rigid as a board. He didn't wave. He didn't cry. He just watched his father disappear behind the tinted glass. He learned a lesson that day that no school could teach. He learned that actions have consequences that cannot be undone with a hug or a toy. Monica fought until the very end. As they tried to put her in the second car, she braced her legs against the doorframe. "I did nothing wrong," she screamed to the sky, to the ship, to anyone who would listen. "I am a good mother. I fed her. She had bread. She is lying. The girl is a liar. She is the problem." The officer pushed her head down, protecting her from hitting the frame, and shoved her inside. He slammed the door. Her muffled screams were cut off. The silence that followed was heavy. The seagulls cried overhead. The water lapped against the pilings. Rachel walked over to us. She looked at the kids, then at me. "Are they okay?" she asked softly. "They will be," I said. The agent walked over. He took off his sunglasses. He looked tired. "Mr. Slater, we have everything we need. The video evidence you sent from the ship, combined with the bank records Rachel provided, is airtight. We are going to recommend no bail. They are flight risks, and they have demonstrated a capacity for witness intimidation." "Thank you," I said. "We will need to take a statement from you and the children. We have a child advocacy center set up near the station. It is comfortable. There are toys. They can talk to a specialist, not a cop." I nodded. "That is fine. We are ready." I looked down at Mia. She was staring at the spot where the car with Monica had disappeared. She was trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the release of adrenaline. The monster was gone. The witch was in the cage. "Is she coming back, Grandpa?" Mia whispered. "No, honey," I said. "Not for a very long time." We walked toward Rachel's car. I held their hands tight. Behind us, the massive cruise ship loomed a monument to excess and fake happiness. But we were walking away from it. We were walking toward my old truck, toward my house, toward a life that would be smaller, simpler, but infinitely more real. The handcuffs had clicked, but for us, it sounded like the turning of a key unlocking a prison door. We were finally free. The family court building in downtown Miami smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. It was a place where dreams went to die, and where the grim reality of broken homes was shuffled through the system in 15-minute intervals. But for us, this was not just a procedural hearing. This was the final battleground. I sat on the hard wooden bench in the front row. To my left sat Rachel Stein, my lawyer, who looked as sharp and lethal as a switchblade in her charcoal suit. To my right sat a court-appointed guardian ad litem, a soft-spoken woman named Mrs. Higgins, who had spent the last 2 weeks interviewing Mia and Leo. And across the aisle sat Austin and Monica. They were not wearing their designer clothes today. They were wearing orange jumpsuits provided by the county jail. Their wrists were shackled to their waists. The transformation was startling. Without his expensive watch and his floral shirts, Austin looked small. He looked like a child playing dress-up in a convict's costume. Monica looked worse. Her roots were showing, her makeup was gone, and her face was a mask of sullen rage. She kept glancing at the back of the courtroom, where the press was banned from entering, hoping for an audience that wasn't there. "All rise!" the bailiff shouted. Judge Elena Vance swept into the room. She was a woman in her 60s with eyes that had seen every variation of human cruelty imaginable. She did not look at the lawyers. She looked straight at the defendants. "Be seated," she commanded. "We are here to determine the permanent custody arrangement for Leo Slater and Mia Slater. We are also here to address the petition for the termination of parental rights filed by Mr. William Slater." Austin's public defender stood up. He was a young man with a cheap suit and a nervous twitch. He looked like he knew he was bringing a knife to a nuclear war. "Your Honor," he began, his voice wavering slightly. "My clients acknowledge that mistakes were made. However, they argue that termination of rights is too severe. They are willing to undergo counseling. They are willing to take parenting classes. They love their children, and they believe that with time and rehabilitation." Judge Vance held up a hand. The lawyer stopped mid-sentence. "Counselor," the judge said, "I have read the police report from the Port of Miami. I have seen the video footage of a chained refrigerator. I have read the psychological evaluation of the children. Do not waste my time with the word mistakes. This was not a mistake. This was a siege." She turned her gaze to Rachel. "Ms. Stein," the judge said, "you mentioned in your filing that there is additional financial evidence relevant to the children's welfare." Rachel stood up. She did not need notes. She knew the case by heart. "Yes, Your Honor. While the criminal charges regarding the bank fraud and the house are being handled in federal court, we have uncovered a specific financial crime that speaks directly to the defendants' fitness as parents." Rachel walked to the evidence table. She picked up a document sealed in a plastic sleeve. 13 years ago, when Mr. William Slater's wife passed away, she left a small inheritance. Mr. Slater did not spend it. He placed it into a protected trust fund specifically designated for the future education of his grandchildren. When Mia was adopted, he added her name to the trust, ensuring she would have the same opportunities as Leo. I watched Austin's back stiffen. He didn't know I knew about this part. He thought I only knew about the house. Rachel continued. The trust was set up so that withdrawals could only be made for educational or medical emergencies and required the signature of the trustee. That trustee is William Slater. She handed the document to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge, 2 days before the defendants embarked on their cruise. Rachel said, "A withdrawal was made from this trust in the amount of $25,000. The stated reason on the bank form was emergency medical surgery for Mia Slater." The courtroom went silent. Even the air conditioning seemed to stop humming. Emergency surgery. The judge repeated, looking at the paper. Rachel nodded. There was no surgery, Your Honor. Mia was healthy. The money was withdrawn in cash. We traced the serial numbers of the bills used to pay for the upgrade to the Royal Loft Suite on the Icon of the Seas. Rachel paused, letting the weight of that sink in. They did not just leave Mia behind, Your Honor. They stole her college fund to pay for the vacation they excluded her from. They used her own future to fund her abandonment. I looked at Monica. For the first time, she looked down. Even she, with all her narcissism and delusion, could not spin this. Stealing from your own child is a taboo that transcends even the darkest family dysfunctions. Rachel held up one final piece of paper. And this, she said, is the withdrawal slip. It bears the signature of William Slater. But as we have proven with a handwriting expert and Mr. Slater's sworn affidavit, he was not at the bank. He was at home gardening. The signature was forged by Austin Slater, who used his position as a former bank manager to override the security protocols. The judge looked at the documents. She adjusted her glasses. She looked at the signature. Then she looked at Austin. Mr. Slater. The judge asked, her voice dangerously quiet. Do you have anything to say? Austin stood up. His chains rattled against the table. He looked at me. He looked for the father who had saved him from high school bullies. He looked for the father who had paid his tuition. But that father was gone. In his place was the logistics officer who had just cut the supply line. Austin stammered. I was going to put it back. When the crypto went up, I was going to put it all back plus interest. So it is true, the judge said. You gambled your daughter's education on internet coins. It wasn't gambling. Austin cried, desperation creeping into his voice. It was an investment. I did it for the family. I wanted them to have the best. You did it for yourself. The judge snapped. She slammed the folder shut. The sound echoed like a gunshot. I have heard enough. She picked up her gavel. She did not hesitate. She did not consult with her clerk. In the matter of Slater versus Slater, the court finds that the defendants, Austin and Monica Slater, have demonstrated a gross and criminal disregard for the physical, emotional, and financial well-being of their children. The court finds them unfit in every definition of the word. She looked at me. Mr. William Slater is hereby granted full permanent legal and physical custody of Leo Slater and Mia Slater. She turned back to Austin and Monica. Furthermore, the judge continued, I am granting the petition to terminate parental rights. You have forfeited the privilege of being parents. You will have no contact with these children until they are 18, and only then if they choose to find you. Which, given what I have seen today, I highly doubt they will. Monica screamed. She jumped up, knocking her chair over. You cannot do this. They are my babies. I built my brand around them. You are ruining my image. Bailiff, remove them, the judge ordered without looking up. 2 deputies moved in. They grabbed Monica by the arms. She was thrashing, screaming about her rights, screaming about her followers, screaming that it was all a conspiracy. Austin did not fight. He slumped in the arms of the officers, his legs dragging on the floor, a dead weight of shame and regret. I watched them go. I watched the heavy oak doors swing shut behind them. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full. It was full of relief. It was full of the promise of safety. The judge looked at me. Her face softened. Mr. Slater, she said, good luck. You have a lot of work ahead of you. Raising children at your age is not easy. I stood up. I buttoned my jacket. I felt stronger than I had in years. I have done hard things before, Your Honor, I said. This is not hard. This is necessary. We walked out of the courtroom. Rachel walked beside me, putting a hand on my shoulder. It is over, Bill, she said. They are gone. The federal trial for the fraud starts next month, but they will not be coming home. The house is safe. The kids are safe. I nodded. I walked to the window at the end of the hallway. I looked down at the street. I saw the transport van waiting to take Austin and Monica back to jail. I thought about the $20,000 I had carried in my boot. I thought about the fear in Mia's eyes when she called me. I thought about Leo's tears in the cabin. It had cost me my son. It had cost me my peace of mind. It had cost me the illusion of a happy family. But as I turned away from the window, ready to go home to the two children waiting for me in the lobby, I knew I had made the only trade that mattered. I had traded a lie for the truth, and the truth, as painful as it was, felt like solid ground. The farmhouse we bought sits on 4 acres of land in the quiet hills of North Carolina. It is a simple place. The floors creak when you walk on them, and the wind whistles through the chimney on stormy nights. But it is ours. It is paid for. And most importantly, it is safe. I was standing at the kitchen island, kneading dough for a loaf of sourdough bread. Baking has become a ritual for me. There is something grounding about the physical act of turning flour and water into sustenance. It is honest work. You cannot lie to dough. If you rush it, if you treat it badly, it will not rise. Through the window above the sink, I could see Leo. He was not staring at a screen. He was not worrying about whether his shoes were expensive enough. He was throwing a tennis ball for the 2 stray dogs we adopted from the shelter last month. He was wearing jeans stained with grass and a t-shirt with a hole in the shoulder, and he was laughing. It was a deep belly laugh that echoed across the yard. Mia was sitting at the kitchen table behind me. She was drawing. She had filled 3 sketchbooks in the last 6 months. She drew trees. She drew the dogs. She drew us, Grandpa, she said, holding up her picture. Look, it was a drawing of the 3 of us standing in front of the house. The son in the corner of the page was wearing sunglasses. It is beautiful, honey, I said, wiping the flour from my hands. We will put it on the fridge. The fridge. The appliance that used to be a symbol of her torture was now covered in art. It was filled with fresh vegetables, milk, and cheese. It was never locked. Mia checked it sometimes just to make sure. She would open the door, stare at the food for a second, smile, and close it again. It was her way of grounding herself. The crunch of gravel on the driveway announced the arrival of the mail carrier. I walked out to the mailbox at the end of the lane. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. I waved to the mailman, who waved back. He didn't know who I was. He didn't know I was the man from the viral video on the cruise ship. To him, I was just Bill, the old guy who bought the Miller place. I sorted through the mail as I walked back. Electric bill, seed catalog, a coupon for tractor supplies. And then I stopped. The last envelope was plain white. The return address was stamped in red ink. Federal Correctional Institution, low security. The name on the corner was Austin Slater. I stood there in the middle of the driveway. The sun felt warm on my shoulders, but the envelope felt cold in my hands. I had not heard from him in 6 months. Rachel told me he had tried to call, but I had blocked the number. I had blocked the prison system from contacting the house phone. I had severed the line. But letters still find a way. I walked back into the house. I did not hide the letter. I placed it on the counter next to the rising dough. "What is that, Grandpa?" Leo asked, coming in through the back door, wiping his muddy boots on the mat. "Just a bill," I lied. "A bill we do not have to pay." I waited until that evening. The kids were asleep. The house was quiet. I sat in the armchair by the stone fireplace where a fire was crackling softly, keeping the chill of the evening at bay. I picked up the letter. I used my pocket knife to slit it open. I pulled out the single sheet of lined yellow paper. The handwriting was messy, desperate. "Dear Dad," it began. I scanned the words. It was exactly what I expected. There was no remorse. There was no inquiry about how Leah was doing in school or if Mia was happy. It was a litany of complaints. The food is terrible. The guards are mean. Monica is filing for divorce and trying to pin everything on me. I need money for the commissary. I need you to appeal the case. I found God, Dad, and he told me you would forgive me. I read the lines about finding God and almost laughed. Austin hadn't found God. He had found a new angle. He was a chameleon trying to change his colors to blend into a new environment, but the lizard underneath was exactly the same. He ended the letter with a demand disguised as a plea. "You owe me this, Dad. You raised me. You cannot leave your son to rot in here." I lowered the paper. I looked at the fire. The flames danced orange and blue, consuming the oak logs, reducing them to ash to make heat for this home. "I owe you nothing," I whispered to the empty room. "I gave you life. I gave you love. I gave you opportunities, and you gave me betrayal. You gave me a granddaughter with PTSD and a grandson who had to unlearn how to be a materialist snob. I owe my loyalty to the people who sleep safely in the bedrooms upstairs. I owe my protection to the innocent. And sometimes protecting the innocent means being the villain in someone else's story." I did not fold the letter back up. I did not save it for a lawyer. I did not keep it as a souvenir of my victory. I leaned forward and tossed the paper into the fire. It landed on a burning log. For a second, nothing happened. Then the corner curled black. The yellow paper caught the flame. The words Austin Slater burned first, then the complaints, then the false prayers. I watched it until it was nothing but a fragile gray flake of ash floating up the chimney into the night sky. I sat back in my chair. The tension left my shoulders. People tell you that family is everything. They tell you that blood is thicker than water. They tell you to forgive and forget. They are wrong. Family is not about whose DNA you share. It is about who would bleed for you and who is holding the knife. I had to cut off a limb to save the body. It was the hardest thing I have ever done. But looking at the peace in this house, listening to the silence that is no longer filled with lies, I know I made the right choice. I am Bill Slater. I am a father. I am a grandfather. And I am finally free. If you have ever had to make a hard choice to protect the ones you love, let me know in the comments. Tell me where you are listening from. And if this story reminded you of your own strength, hit that like button and subscribe. Because sometimes the only way to build a new life is to burn the bridges to the old one.